Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We'll leave these last few minutes for people to log in and get settled. Thank you for being here. Hey, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for our Accords and CCTSI Community Engagement Forum. We're really glad to have you. I'm going to get us started with a little bit of information, kind of background, upcoming events, and quickly move to our panel today. I'm really excited to introduce them to all of you. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a little bit about Accords. We are funded by the University of Colorado School of Medicine, as well as Children's Hospital Colorado, and we are something of a unique one-stop shop for pragmatic research, multidisciplinary collaborative research environment. We have strong methodological cores and programs to support pragmatic health services researchers. We provide consultation and team building for grant proposals, some mentorship training and support, and extensive educational offerings like our community engagement forum in partnership with CCTSI. We have some upcoming events that we hope to see many of you at over the next couple of months. First, our Learning Health System seminar series this year has events coming up on February 5th and March 5th. As well as April 2nd, and we hope to see you at many of those. I think these are really interesting conversations about how our health system can learn and grow within our usual operations work. And so I think there's a lot of really interesting conversations happening in that series. As part of our digital health and clinical informatics series, we will have Mount Lascauzo here from City of Hope on May 12th. And then Our Colorado Pragmatic Research and Health Conference will be June 4th and 5th this year. We hope that's already on your calendars. And we hope to see you there in person at the Anschutz Health Science Building here on campus. Also, save the date for our next in our Community Engagement Forum series. We have our Community Engagement Showcase on April 4th in Krugman Conference Hall, and that'll be from 11 to 1 with some presentation as well as networking with academic and community partners. And then you can always find our previous community engagement forums on the website. If you are looking for other resources for engaging community partners, there's lots of resources on that site. And then we also want to highlight that CCTSI and Accords offer community engagement consultations. If you need some advice or guidance on how to engage with community, we have some great experienced community members and academic partners to help you with that. And you can reach out to Kaylee. And then lastly, applications are coming soon for the community immersion training and community engagement program. And you can watch the CCTSI website or your email for more information about those. Okay, I am really thrilled to introduce our panel today. To give you a sense of our format, we are going to have a little bit of an overview introduction. Dr. Katie Nearing is going to share a little bit about the program we're talking about, and then we're going to move into a panel format. And so we have some prepared questions. We hope that you will all use the chat for any of your additional questions. We may not have as much time as usual to have those answered live, but we will do our best to respond to those in the chat. Or our panelists have offered to connect with anybody who has lingering questions after this as well. Okay. So I'm going to move into our introductions. First, I'd like to introduce Catherine or Katie Nearing. She's an associate professor in the Division of Geriatric Medicine at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus and is associate director of education and evaluation for the VA Eastern Colorado Geriatric Research Education and Clinical Center at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center. She serves as the principal investigator for the NIH National Institute of Aging R24, which is a research infrastructure award titled Older Adults from Diverse Backgrounds Catalyze Innovative Approaches for Enhancing Recruitment and Retention, which will be a key focus of our conversation today. After we hear from Katie, our panelists include Lindsay Fouquet, who's the Director of Talent Acquisition and Classification at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. And in her role, she leads the campus's staff recruitment and classification processes. She earned a Master's of Business Administration from Kansas State University and holds a Senior Certified Professional Certification from SHRM. Faith Houston is an older adult research specialist, or an OARS, at the Anschutz Medical Campus, recruiting older adults into clinical trials. Her life experience includes providing individual disaster assistance with FEMA, processing Social Security disability claims, teaching English in Japan, and serving as a hospital chaplain. Cross-cultural experience includes travel to over 25 countries and leading volunteer teams worldwide for short-term humanitarian projects. And then we have Dr. Sarah Weary, who's an assistant professor in the Division of Geriatric Medicine and a research health scientist at the VA Eastern Colorado Health Care System, where she researches the effects of exercise on bone health. She's hired an older adult research specialist in 2023 to assist with recruiting for an NIH-funded multi-site clinical trial focused on the effects of weight loss on bone health in older adults. I'm really excited to have all four of you with us, and I'm thrilled to hand over the floor, Katie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for those introductions. So I'll just move to sharing my screen here and we'll get started. I appreciate so much this opportunity to introduce you all to older adult research specialists, a great addition to any research team. All right, sorry about that. So I want to begin by just providing some framing about why it is important to have older adults as part of our research workforce. We know that older adults are underrepresented in research, and of course this has implications for healthcare quality and healthcare outcomes for older adults. We also know that in 2019, the NIH instituted a new policy requiring the inclusion of individuals across the lifespan. So what this means for us as researchers is that we must provide a scientific or ethical justification for age-based exclusion criteria. We are not doing well in terms of really meeting this NIH mandate. For example, the same year that NIH instituted this new policy, only about a quarter of our actively enrolling adult clinical trials at CU Anschutz enrolled even one person 50 years of age or over. And this chart shows us what our research workforce has looked like. And this chart is looking at the segment of our research workforce that has typically done most of the recruitment and supporting study participants for retention. And specifically, you can see that individuals 65 years to 79 years of age have remained less than 2% of our research workforce. And yet, Colorado nationally is the state with the second fastest growing population of older adults, so individuals 65 years of age and over. And within the next decade, we expect that more adults, there will be more adults 65 years of age and over than there will be individuals 18 years of age and under. So this, we have a tremendous opportunity in Colorado to do a better job of including older adults from our community, from our state, as part of our research workforce and as participants of research. So the vision for this initiative was to create meaningful employment opportunities for older adults. We know based on national survey data that 60% of older adults want to work in some capacity. And in creating this opportunity to become part of our research workforce, we can make our research workforce more age inclusive, thereby increasing our collective capacity to better reach, recruit, and retain older adult peers in clinical trials as study participants. And of course, the more diverse our study participants, the more generalizable our research results and products are to other populations. So with the ultimate goal being, of course, to improve healthcare quality and health outcomes for older adults. So to achieve this vision, we're investing funding support we have from the National Institute on Aging to train and promote the hiring of older adult research specialists. So these are older adults who are supporting us in better reaching, recruiting, and retaining older adult peers and other underrepresented populations in clinical trials. We designed the training to prepare older adults for the community-facing and participant-centered roles listed here to help address many of the pain points we might experience around trying to recruit and retain study participants. And a unique part of older adult research specialist training and preparation for these roles is health navigation training. So with this slide, I want to show you what the training looks like that all of our older adult research specialists undergo. So all of our graduates have completed a 14-week, 160-hour plus competency-based training program that, again, begins with health navigation training as the foundation for their preparation, and then they continue on into the older adult research specialist part of the training sequence. The blue arrow here that connects this all and is integrated across is our digital literacy training component. And we offer the digital literacy training as tech office hours twice a week, again, throughout the 14 weeks to support job readiness and to help ensure that older adult research specialists have the skills and knowledge to support our study participants with technical aspects of participating in a study, such as perhaps downloading and uploading an informed consent document. So this is what I really want you to know about older adult research specialists. These are individuals who share lived experiences with those we most need to include in research. We know that it can make a difference, for example, during the informed consent process, if the person sitting across from you shares background characteristics, shared lived experiences, that can help create a level of comfort and psychological safety that allows questions to surface and be adequately answered through that informed consent discussion. OARS bring transferable skills from other careers. For example, who better to help us think about how we can communicate complex aspects of a research study than a former educator who has honed these skills around how to communicate complex information and to tailor their approaches based on learner needs. The other thing I really want you to know about older adult research specialists is that they are pursuing these roles because they are passionate about research. They understand the connection between research and health, and they are pursuing these roles at this time of their work life or work span because this work is a calling for them. It's not a stepping stone to some other, career aspiration. So they have this unique training. I've mentioned the health navigation training. The aspects highlighted on this slide are the components that they are receiving through the health navigation training specifically. And then when they get to the older adult research specialist part of the training sequence, we're learning about clinical trials. We're learning about the evolution of human subjects research protections and current regulations. We're learning about the 9 basic elements of informed consent and the 9 additional elements of informed consent, and are practicing the informed consent process. They also learn frameworks that can help us think about not only barriers, but facilitators to including older adults in research, frameworks and thinking that they can bring into their work as part of your study team. And then finally, the culmination of their training is that they do problem-based, solution-focused, team-based projects that are very similar to our work, where we have a complex problem that we've got to solve under time constraints with working with a diverse team. And so OARS, by the time they have graduated from our training program, have demonstrated that they can do this work. So we have at this time graduated 5 cohorts. We have 60 OARS graduates. Here's a look at some of the demographics of our former graduates, as well as where the 20 older adult research specialists who have been hired on our campus are currently working. We have 5 other graduates who are working as health navigators, some of whom are with our affiliated healthcare systems. And then we have 5 additional individuals who completed the training and have stayed in the roles that they had. For example, a CCTSI Community Research Liaison is one of our graduates and now part of our instructor team. So just to wrap up and then move right into our panel discussion, I wanted to leave you with a couple of resources. This QR code will take you to a site where there are 3 tabs. The first of which is a tab that features bios of our older adult research specialist graduates. These are individuals who have not yet quite found that perfect fit for them on a research team. So I invite you to go there and check out those bios and see if you can find a good match for your team. That site will also highlight our OARS consult service and our Research Roadshow teams, and I'm happy to answer more questions about those. if you want to follow up after this. The other resource I wanted to share with you is some language you could use for crafting a job posting should you wish to hire an older adult research specialist, and this language has been vetted with HR. So we wanted to provide that for you. The link at the bottom of this slide highlights some relevant competencies if you want to use those to fold into your position description, as well as some great interview questions if you want to use those as part of your interviewing. So with that, I want to quickly acknowledge our wonderful partners across campus. We could not do this work without you, and then move us into the panel. So I'm going to stop sharing. All right. There we go. So as Sarah mentioned in the introductions, we have a wonderful panel that can give us different perspectives on this initiative. One person of whom is Lindsay Fouquet, who, as mentioned in the introduction, is the Director of Talent Acquisition for our campus. And so, Lindsay, if I might start with you to provide an HR perspective. And my first question for you is, what is an encore career?
Thank you for the question, Katie. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for having us. That's a great question. What is an encore career? I don't know how many of you actually heard that term before. It's definitely a term that is gaining a lot more momentum in the marketplace, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But really, an encore career is when somebody decides to pursue a new career opportunity, and it's often after they've had a robust career or decided to retire, and they've decided to shift gears and try something different. And some of those motivators that we're finding for these individuals is they really want a sense of purpose and fulfillment. They're maybe wanting to give back to their community in a different way than what they've been able to do before. They're maybe looking for a flexible work experience, something different than what they've done before, or potentially it's something that they're really just interested in and they're wanting to learn a new skill set as they experience a new avenue of life. And so that's really what we have for encore career. So if you hear that, that is becoming a much more common term out there, especially in the HR space.
And often when I share about this initiative, I talk about it as a pathway from training to encore careers for older adults in research. And all of our OARS are pursuing encore careers. So thank you for sharing that. If I might ask you a couple of other questions, and then we'll move on and invite and bring in our older adult research specialist on the panel, Faith Houston. So Lindsay, the next question I have for you, what are the current trends in terms of older adults remaining in the workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of different research out there. As a lot of people know, one of our larger generations, the baby boomer generation, a lot of those individuals are getting towards retirement age. And whenever you have a large demographic that's going towards retirement, that impacts the workforce quite a bit. I was doing some research on it, and with Pew Research, they did a recent study, and it's showing that about 19% of older adults that are 65 and plus are deciding to stay in the workforce, which is definitely up. When I was looking at the research a little bit more, it's definitely shifted since 1990. Prior to 1990, we only saw maybe about 10 to 11% that was staying in the workforce. And so the fact that we're seeing a lot more participate in the workforce and stay around is actually kind of exciting, where they've got different skill sets they're wanting to bring into these new careers. And so being able to think about it that way is really exciting. And then another part that I was looking at, and it was with the US Bureau of Statistics, they were showing that of all the different generations when it comes to different age ranges, it's really that 55 plus that's actually increasing when it comes to the job market. A lot of the ones before that are actually going down, but we're seeing the 55 plus that's going up. And the one that's increasing the most is the 65 plus that's out there. And so you're seeing a lot more of those be able to remain in the workforce and wanting to participate. And some of those factors, when you really think about it, especially like with some of the retirement entitlements with Social Security, they've changed some of those structured plans to where people are able to stay in work longer, or maybe be offered more incentives to stay in work longer, which is causing it. Another factor that we're noticing is the rise of remote or hybrid work is also enticing for people to be able to stay in the workplace a little bit longer, since they have a little bit more flexibility that offers them a change of pace to be able to do something different, which is exciting. I know Dr. Nearing mentioned earlier, the state of Colorado really does have a large population of older adults that are participating in the workforce. And so it's really an exciting opportunity for us to be able to engage with those individuals as they're looking for job opportunities.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I think that this was on that slide where I shared the demographics of our graduates, but the average age of our older adult research specialists is 68, and the range has been 56 to 82. So definitely, similar to the trends that you were talking about. So one more question for you, Lindsay, if I may, and then I'm going to invite Faith and Sarah into this conversation. So, and you alluded to this a little bit, the applications of older adult research specialists and other older adults are likely to look different than other candidates who are applying for open positions. How should we think about OARS resumes and the resumes of other older adults?
Yes, I love this question. I get to partner with Dr. Nearing on this program. My team actually goes through training with the OARS participants in it, where we go over how to interview, how to prepare your materials to get them set up for success with the CU Anschutz. But it's not just for the OARS graduates, it's also for other people that are also older adults applying to positions across campus. Really what I would say is their resumes will look different at times. You might be looking at the resume and just kind of going, wow, they've had this whole robust career where they've done something different that isn't necessarily what I'm been doing in mine, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't done some trainings, or they haven't done some community-based work, or even volunteer work where it might lend itself to the position that you're hiring for. And so when I really think about what my best advice is when it goes through, is really kind of thinking through, what are the qualifications that you have? I know Dr. Nearing had listed some of the minimum and preferred qualifications. Those are always a great place to start for those. If you're truly hiring for an entry-level role, a bachelor's degree is really the minimum of like what you're looking for. And so really being able to take a look at those materials that they've put in there and thinking through, do they have that bachelor's degree? Do they have the work experience? And just really kind of focusing on, do they have those experience and education that is required in the position? And if they do have those, then that's when you want to consider moving them forward. I've heard some different questions I've been asked in the past where it's like, well, I can see that they've had this other career. I mean, they might not even want the pay that I'm able to offer for this position. They chose to apply to that job. And so really, it's one of those things to not really question why, or the motivations why they applied for the job. It's really our job to really think through, are the qualifications of the role being met? And is this person willing to, because they did apply to the job, do this work? And then it's the interview that you're really going to be able to think through some of those pieces. Another part that I always like to mention is a resume is just a document that shows your qualifications. But during the interview process is when you can really be able to see those skills, those soft skills or intangible skills, be able to shine some of those things like communication, work ethic, adaptability, different things like that you might be able to put together. And so I really would encourage people to think through, what are some of those competencies or skills that are really going to make that person successful in that role, and being able to tailor those interview questions around those to really discover how maybe their past experiences might lend themselves to being successful in their new career. And so I really think that that's my key factor in there, is just trying to figure out, like, that piece. But then the last thing I'll leave you with on this is the rise of hybrid and remote work. Can the work that you're doing be able to be done hybrid or remote, where somebody might be able to come in and have a little bit more of a flexible work experience, is always going to be beneficial. And we've also seen some benefits to, if you're advertising for a position, maybe casting your net a little bit wider and offering full or part-time job opportunities. You may never know how that part-time piece might be more attractive to maybe an older adult or other individuals that might be in the job market looking for those types of job opportunities. And so those are some of the key things that I would recommend.
Thank you so much for that guidance and advice, Lindsay. And in the OARS bios, I do try to really highlight those transferable skills, those skills that our older adult research specialists are bringing from other careers into this encore career, and that could really make them a strong part of your research team. So with that, I want to invite Faith into our conversation now. And Faith, you're one of our older adult research specialists. You graduated with our very first cohort. And so why did you choose to do the training program?
Well, thank you. My name is Faith. I am a real life OARS. We really do exist. And yes, I was in the first cohort. I had retired about a couple of years, I think, and this program came along in an email through an organization I was connected with. And I wanted to be connected to a community at large. And Anschutz is a large community. And I wanted to be part of a new program. And this was I was in the first cohort. So I kind of knew that we were going to muddle through this together in the first cohort. And really, there wasn't much muddling. Katie was so prepared. So it was great to be with, I don't know how many we had, 14, 15, 17 people all over the age of 60. And I thought, oh, good, I don't have to compete with somebody much younger than myself. Also, because I've always been interested in health. I don't know how many of you in the audience are familiar with the store, the Natural Grocer or Vitamin Cottage, but I started shopping there with my mother at the age of 10. So I've been there a long time. And it was the first little store, cottage. And so my mother really was a pioneer and always talking about health, reading about health. And so I want to continue in that vein, and I want to help people discover and develop a healthy aging for them. So those are kind of some of the reasons why I chose this.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a big one.
In part-time.
Yeah.
Okay. So Faith, why did you aspire to an encore career in research?
Well, I wanted to know what was happening in research, particularly for those over 60. And at the time I was over 60. And, you know, that we're kind of on the cutting edge of all of this. And as you've already said, older adults are underrepresented in clinical trials and clinical research. And yet the aging population is taking over the healthcare system. We all know that. So we have to learn a way to address this. And I think research is one of the ways with older adults in the clinical research. Again, I thought it would be a way to stay connected to a larger community. To be a part of a team was important to me. So I knew that I would be connected with a researcher and probably some other people in that team, and working together to figure out how we're going to do this. And kind of be on the forefront of what was happening in research. And also, I happened to work with Sarah on a multi-site study. So we're working with someone clear across the country on this particular clinical trial. And one of the things I tell people is one of my goals in life has always been to have as many different jobs as possible before I die. So I thought, well, here's one more. I'll just add this one on there. So that's kind of how I don't know that I really was looking for an encore career, but something that I hadn't done before. Yeah.
Thank you, Faith. So one more question for you, and then I'm going to invite Sarah into the discussion to bring a PI perspective, a researcher perspective into the conversation. But before we do that, Faith, one last question for you. How has your lived experience, prior professional roles, and expertise been valuable in your role as an older adult research specialist?
Well, I think one of the things is much of my professional experience has been has required a high degree of listening. You know, whether it was with FEMA and disaster victims and listening to their tragic events, whether as a hospital chaplain, giving hope and reassurance to patients that things will be different, working with cross-cultural communities and finding out what are the needs there and listening to that. Excuse me. I just wanted to know that participants that I could hear their concerns. So like yesterday, I was talking to a prospective participant, and the gentleman was very interested, and he was having a hip replacement today. I said, oh, well, I haven't had a hip replacement, but I've had 2 knee replacements. So I kind of know what that recovery is going to be like. And instead of saying, well, I'm sorry, we can't use you, to say, okay, well, we're going to call you in 6 months and we're going to see how you're doing. And that will give you 6 months to recover. And then we hope that maybe you can join our program. So really listening to where they're at in their life, excuse me, my voice. I think identifying with the aging process, you know, whether it's loss of height. One of the questions I have to ask, how tall are you? And I always get, well, I used to be. I used to be. I thought, yep, I know that. I know that. Or, you know, joint replacements, as I mentioned, illnesses, you know, I can kind of relate with some of that. And also, I don't know if you mentioned this, Katie, but we have heard this, that many of the researchers are under the age of 40. And so I think someone like myself can bring in some of the things that researchers need to think about in a clinical trial, such as transportation to the site. Are these participants mobile? If there's a medication, do they have a swallowing problem? And how can we work with that? Mobility issues. How is the parking? You know, Lindsay and I were on a team last summer to look at the campus and parking and accessibility and all of those things that when you're younger and very mobile, you don't think about those things. So I think that's one thing an older adult research specialist can bring to clinical trials.
Thank you so much for sharing about your work, Faith, and how important it is to have older adult research specialists or older adults on our research team so that we can better connect with potential study participants who may themselves be older and can be responsive to their concerns. So thank you for what you shared and the work that you're doing. So at this point, I'm going to shift to Sarah, Dr. Sarah Weary, who is going to share with us her perspective as a principal investigator for a multi-site clinical trial and someone who has hired an older adult research specialist. Dr. Weary, when you hired Faith, this was a really, really new initiative. It's still new, but it was really, really early days. And this was completely untested at the time. What gave you the courage to consider and then hire an older adult research specialist graduate?
Sure. So, Katie, I think we've talked about this a little bit, but at the time, it didn't really feel brave. So it felt like a situation where I had a very clear need on a study team. And anytime you hire someone new, it's a risk, and you're never sure that that person is going to work out. But this was a training program where I knew what type of exposure they were getting. I knew what type of education and training they were going through to know that I was helping to identify someone who was very interested in research and had been given the skills and opportunities to develop what they needed to do to be successful. Plus, I also had the benefit of talking with some of the OARS in that first cohort about the research that I did. And when identifying that Faith was probably going to be the right person, knowing that our research and intellectual interests were very closely aligned. So I had someone who I knew was well-trained, who was interested in the research that I was doing, and was very engaged and excited about the ability to serve on a research team.
Thank you. And you've brought up a number of things that I'd like to expand on just a little bit. So in the kind of overview presentation that I provided, we will be sharing those slides, and I've included some extra slides in that, which include a really detailed accounting of our curriculum, what people are receiving during the health navigation part of the training, as well as truly a session by session accounting of what they get during the OARS part of our training. So you, like Dr. Weary, will have the information about what OARS received through the training, and it'll be very detailed. There was something else I wanted to piggyback on, and I can't now remember what it was. Maybe it'll come back to me. So, Dr. Weary, what would you say are the benefits of hiring older adults to be part of study teams?
Sure. Faith touched on this a little bit with her responses to some of her questions, but having the perspective of the population you're trying to recruit, I really can't describe how beneficial that is. So when we brought Faith into the team, looking at things like our questionnaires of how do these need to be rephrased in a way that's accessible to an older adult population? How are we explaining how to get to our campus, how to park? When we're designing screening questions and we're asking these to people who are interested in the study, it's going to mean something very different to me than it may mean to someone who's over the age of 60 or over the age of 65. Even reframing how we're designing the layout of things that we hand to our older adults, that we're highlighting the really important information that we want them to get. And also the benefit of teaching the other members of my study team how to do intergenerational communication. So getting them better at explaining things to people of all ages. And another piece I just like to add on is the benefit from the participant of being able to have a conversation with someone who understands the stage they are in life. So I do a lot of exercise-based research, and a lot of times at the point of screening, we're asking about exercise and physical activity habits. And through the experience of having Faith on my team, really seeing the difference between having someone who's 22 years old asking an older adult about their exercise habits versus someone who's closer in age to that prospective participant asking the same question, and the quality of information that you get by knowing that the question is being asked by someone who really understands that person's life experience to get a more accurate and clear picture of what you're trying to get from whatever it is that you're asking them.
So I would like to invite you to expand on what you just shared, Dr. Weary. So what have you observed in terms of the difference that Faith has made for potential study participants?
I think she gives them a sense that they're within a community of researchers who understands them, who understands what limitations or benefits they may be getting, can communicate research to them in a way that's much more accessible, and is explaining things to them in terms that they understand. So in the example that Faith gave, knowing what it's going to be like to recover from a joint replacement. So she knows about the study and she knows about this person's life experience, so is able to explain the expectations of the study in a way that's going to make sense to them.
And connect those two pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you kind of a part two to that question. So what have you observed in terms of the difference that Faith has made for members of the study team locally and nationally?
Sure. So as you've heard from Faith, so I'm sure that you've all gathered from this, she's an excellent communicator and she's a fantastic listener. So she's, I think, brought a sense of community to my study team that would have been very different if she wasn't part of our group. So bringing in those previous life experiences, she has really insightful and creative ways to try to address issues that I never would have thought of, that I don't think my study team would have thought of. Teaching them ways to be more active and engaged in the way that they're listening to concerns, of trying to understand a perspective that is going to be very different than yours. Learning different ways of communicating or explaining things that are going on, of them being in generation that have grown up with certain types of technology their entire life versus others who may not, of how do we use these different systems or software programs, that things that may be intuitive to them are not necessarily intuitive to study team or may not be intuitive to our participants, and bridging a little bit of that gap of making them a little bit more thoughtful of how they're engaging with their participants and with each other. And we see that branch out too as well to our collaborators in Wake Forest. So they're the other site in this multi-site clinical trial, and their study team structure is somewhat similar in that they have a woman who does a lot of their recruiting who is older. And I think it's been nice to have now this peer relationship between Faith and our other recruiter, but then also our study team that ranges in age from people who are interns and undergraduate to chairs of departments who are getting close to retirement, of having these abilities to learn how to now also cross-culturally communicate intergenerationally and geographically, because an older adult in Winston-Salem, North Carolina is very different than an older adult in Metro Denver, Colorado. So I just see a lot of benefits of bringing people in that are able to talk to each other and collaborate in ways based on all of their various different lived experiences.
And I know of a story about how Faith, you brought you really engaged your transferable skills from your work with FEMA and working with communities at the time of a disaster, and kind of that being able to identify people in crisis and support them. And I know that there's a story with how you supported the other research study coordinator who was under a great deal of stress as an example of using those transferable skills to support the team. So do you want to tell about that story? I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
You probably know the specifics better than I do. I don't know exactly when that was. Are you talking about the Wake Forest team or
Yes.
Refresh my memory?
Well, I think that the research study coordinator was experiencing a lot of stress about tasks and timelines. And because you have this depth of experience with crisis management, you were able to recognize her stress and help her with, with some coping in that situation. And I think it's just such a great example of skills and experiences that you're bringing in from another career that don't necessarily on the surface seem to relate to research, but it was so helpful in that situation.
Well, there used to be a saying in FEMA when I was out deployed with FEMA on a disaster. It's a hair on fire day. It's a hair on fire day. I mean, everybody was just chaotic. And sometimes research can kind of get that way because there's very specific deadlines. Well, Sarah knows this, very specific deadlines. And I think that was kind of weighing in maybe. And I don't know what I said at the time or whatever, but I just knew that it was going to work out. If we just can, settle down a little bit, calm down a little bit, it's all going to work out. So I don't know if that's what you were referring to, but
yes, I think so.
It was just,
oh my God. Can chime in a little bit because I was on this meeting where I'm watching this whole thing unfold. In study startup, we're all stressed out. We're trying to get everything moving and going and coordinate a multi-site. And you could just feel the stress. And I remember, Faith, you had said, what can you focus on right now that will make things a little bit easier? So what is the direct task in front of you of this thing you can do in this moment to keep moving forward? Everything will work out, just one task at a time.
You guys have better memory than I do.
Thank you. I just think that's such a great example of those transferable skills. So one last question for Sarah, and we'll see if we have questions, maybe one question in the chat. So Sarah, what would you say to another researcher who is considering hiring an older adult research specialist? How might this initiative support others' research programs?
I think when you're looking at your study team and what your needs are, identifying these types of roles where an older adult research specialist would be a really good fit. So for me, it was recruitment. And a lot of times when we think about filling out our study teams, and we know that recruitment is such a big part of clinical research, we hire someone to do recruitment and screening and study visits and maybe some regulatory, that you're trying to hire a generalist to do a lot of different things, where older adult research specialists give you an opportunity to really hire more of a specialist to do things that they are exceptionally good at and bring a lot of value to your team, to free up other members of your team to maybe focus on the things that they're really good at. And I wouldn't view hiring an OARS any different than hiring any other member of a research team to fit a need. And arguably, if you're hiring an OARS, you know you're hiring someone who's very deeply invested in participating in research and being part of this larger community. This is in no way to knock those who are getting these jobs to advance themselves, maybe go back to school or have a career ladder. And we're always happy to support those people. But there's still a benefit to hiring someone where this is where they want to be, this is the work that they want to do, and they'll be very good at what they're being brought on to do.
Thank you for that, Sarah. And yeah, again, those OARS bios that I mentioned and provided the QR code to go to the site where those are all posted. You mentioned, Sarah, the alignment between you and Faith in terms of your interest in bone health and mobility as we age. And one of the things that those bios highlight is those topical areas of interest, as well as those transferable skills. So I invite you all to go try to find a fit for your team among those OARS bios. So I see a question in the chat. Is there an upcoming OARS training? So we are starting our 6th and final cohort with the current funding that we have next week. It's a full cohort of 20 people, and we are actively applying for grants to sustain this program. And hopefully one day we will take this nationally. Wake Forest is interested in partnering on perhaps a multi-site OARS training program. So we'll see where that goes in the future. But yes, we're training one more cohort. It's already full and we start next week. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to secure funding to keep this going at this institution and also take it to other institutions. So let me just check the chat and see if there are other questions for us. I don't see any. Am I missing any?
I don't see any more right now. If anybody is on and has a question, I think we have time for one more. Hands up or in the chat. Or just pop off mute.
I could ask one more question of our panelists, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
I do want to make space for the audience. Okay, so Lindsay, this is another question for you, if that's okay. So this, let me rephrase. How does this initiative set our institution apart as an age-friendly university? And why is this important?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I don't know if everybody's aware, but we are designated as an age-friendly university. We've been designated as such since 2021, and that work is done by a lot of people across campus that are working on initiatives that really would really impact the ability for individuals of all different ages to be able to participate in programs across the university, whether that be research, learning, working, things like that. And so I always think that's a fun fact where it's like we are an age-friendly university. We were the 4th biomedical research institution in the world to get this designation, and the first one in Colorado, which is exciting. What I think is really great about having that designation is it's something that we can be very proud about, but we can also be able to show So the medical research that's being done on this campus, the healthcare that's being done on this campus is for all ages. And for us to be able to have that designation to really show that we can care for individuals of all ages is very important and really gives us a competitive advantage.
And be a campus for the lifespan in terms of, learning and working together. And Lindsay, you mentioned that we received this designation in December 2021, and really, like any designation, it's the beginning of the work, right? And it can galvanize time and effort to really advance the vision toward becoming an age-friendly university. Our three main priorities as an age-friendly university are intergenerational learning, encore careers. That's one reason I really want our audience to know that term. So thank you for defining that for us, Lindsay. And research and innovation. And this initiative with the older adult research specialist is advancing all three of those parts of our work as an age-friendly university. So with that, that feels like a good place to kind of wrap up and close. We've gone from the institutional level, the national level, the institutional level, to talk about our research teams and OARS as part of those research teams, and then come back full circle to talk about our culture and climate as a university, as an age-friendly university, and our aspirations to truly become that. So with that, I'm going to wrap us up because I don't see any additional questions surfacing in the chat. And I just want to thank the Accords group who organizes these forums for inviting us and creating this space for us to share about this initiative and the work of the older adult research specialists. So thank you all.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Katie, Faith, Lindsay, and Sarah. What a great presentation. And we are so fortunate to have this resource on our campus. And I just want to, Katie is somebody that we've worked with in CCTSI community engagement for a long time. And just it's been great to see you develop this vision and realize it and how it's come to fruition. So that's been fantastic. I also want to point out that the OARS team welcomes further questions after this presentation or contacts. Please don't hesitate to reach out to them. Just a few housekeeping items before we close. Just a reminder, the evaluation for today's session, there's a link in the chat that Jordan has placed there. Please give us feedback. We take that very seriously as we're planning our ongoing forums. So we look forward to hearing from you on that. Speaking of ongoing forums, our next one is going to be a special one in that it's our now annual showcase. And that's going to happen on Friday, April 4th. It'll be held in the Krugman Conference Room in the Anschutz Health Sciences building. We're still zeroing in on a time frame, but it'll likely be 11 to 1. Additional information and an RSVP will be coming hopefully within the next week or two. Make sure that you're on one or both of the Accords or CCTSI Community Engagement and Health Equity listservs to learn more, and so we can inform you of that when it's coming. Just to say a little bit more, since we've got a few minutes about that showcase, it's in person. It's where we invite community partners and their academic partners to come as teams. They'll have tables to present the partnerships that they've done. So you have a chance to go around the room and actually interact directly with these folks, ask them questions about how they formed their partnerships, how things have gone and see if there are potential partners in the room for your work. So it's a lot of fun, and we hope you'll mark your calendars for that. And with that, I think that's all we have for today. Thanks so much for your attendance and presence. And thanks again to Katie, Faith, Lindsay, and Sarah.